Hi, welcome. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, totally. And so for those of you who don't know, we have Jiezhen here with us today. And there's so many things that are so admirable about her. But what I'm really excited about is I've known her for such a long time.
Yeah.
I've known you for more than 10 years.
Yeah.
I've known you before you were married.
Yes.
I obviously before you were married, before you had children, and now married, 2 kids.
Yeah.
And so thank you for coming on, because one of the interesting things about you is the different seasons of life and leadership as a modern woman in Singapore, but I'm going to say globally for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we'd love to hear this evolution that you've gone through. And of course, we have a write-up on Jiezhen, so you guys can go and read it. But you were the executive founder or executive director of The Hidden Good when I first met you. And now there's more things that you're involved in.
Yeah.
So I'd love to start with that, which is your vision and what you're up to is really about making a difference and impacting communities.
Yeah.
So why don't we start there? What drives you to that?
Yeah. No, thank you. Thanks so much, Tini, for having me here today and for the question. I think when I look back, it's been more than 10 years. And like you said, when we first met, I was the executive director of The Hidden Good. I think I had just moved back to Singapore actually not too long ago, maybe about a year or two before that. It was another chapter, I guess, of figuring out who I was at that point in time and how I needed to be. I think the question I've always had for myself is, how can I be most impactful and effective at where I'm at right now too? Because it's something that checking in and being really present with who we are in that moment and not just carrying on old stories just because we've had them for the longest time, but also acknowledging the consistent threads that have followed us through the different, seasons, because that's our values, our underlying beliefs that bring us to where we are today, right? So I think something that's been quite consistent for me through my life is wanting to have a positive impact on the world. And I think that was quite apparent from even when I was in school. I was very into doing we had a community involvement program, like the CIP in school, and I really enjoyed that. That was one of my favorite activities in school, was volunteering. And my mother always taught us growing up that it wasn't as important how well we did in school and our grades, but more important to be a good person. And how we, whatever we receive, the importance of paying it forward, giving back, right? So that was instilled for me in a very young age. And I think shaped a lot of the decisions that I made, whether it's what I chose to study, what I chose to embark on in my first job, and eventually what led me to the Hidden Good.
Can I just pause you for a minute? Let's just go back to school time where you started to develop this passion for volunteering and making a difference and impacting, right? Any memories or any real things that you experienced that really told you, yes, this is it?
In Singapore, I think when I was going to school, there was you had a certain number of hours you were supposed to fulfill, right? For CIP hours, they called it. And so some people would do, those flag days, selling stickers or, collecting donations. And there was always, there was the financial donation element, people volunteering their time to raise funds. And then you could also volunteer your time to, help out with a cause and an issue. And I think what I found to be very gratifying was in the process was, you think you're going to help people, but really you're growing through that. And I think that's my work now as a coach and being in this, space of, human potential and transformation and leadership is that, you think that you're there to help someone, but we often forget that we are also transforming through it.
Oh, totally.
And I think I enjoyed the most was actually working with people. So it wasn't so much the selling and fundraising that kind of drew me to it, but I really enjoyed the volunteering I volunteered a lot with this girls' home called Andrew and Grace Home. And I'm still in touch with some of the girls I mentored there today. But I think that was actually my first foray into mentorship and I guess a more informal form of coaching. But I really enjoyed the ability to be with another human and witness what they were going through. And not that you need to fix anything. Sometimes it's just being present.
Yeah.
Right. And being there for someone in a way that maybe someone else hadn't been before.
How has that changed now that you're older, now that, your worldview has expanded? How has that same vision adjusted to life?
Yeah.
How does that look?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. And I think the hidden goal was a really big part of my life for several years, right? And I think it became so much of my identity and who I was. And it was almost like when I stepped away. So I stepped away as executive director when I went to Harvard to pursue my master's degree. I stepped down as executive director. I stayed on the board. But it was because I had lived and breathed that for so many years, right? For several years. It was almost I had to let go of this version of myself. I remember when I got to Harvard and they're like, oh, and people, you're introducing yourself, and I was no longer officially the executive director of the Hidden Good then, but that had been my title, right, it was like girl boss on my business card. And that was such a big part of who I was. And I feel like I almost had to grieve this loss of who am I now. And one of the fields and bodies of work that really resonated with me during my time at Harvard was the space of adaptive leadership. And by the Professor Ron Heifetz, right, at the Kennedy School. And he often asked us, like, there are so many people that come, they're diplomats, they're, leaders and doing so much work in the world. But he's like, who are you when you're not your job, when you're not your title? And I think that applies to, who are you when you're not all these things on your resume? And even as a parent, right? Like, it's very easy to also kind of get sucked into the identity of I'm a mom and that's it. But we're not ever, that's never it.
Right.
We are a combination of, we contain multitudes.
Yeah.
So I remember
So what did you come up with?
Yeah, I think it was embracing the fact that, I think it's not having a one-liner answer either. So every time when I have an interview or something, I feel like it's almost an opportunity to reintroduce myself.
Right.
Right? Because even from last week to this week, so much things have evolved, things have changed. We're always evolving and changing, and I think being able to tune in to what is present and most alive for us in the moment is actually so important, and not just coming up with a cookie cutter like elevator speech of who we are. It's almost every time you introduce yourself is actually an opportunity to meet yourself in the present moment for who you are and who you're becoming.
That's
and who
really
you've been.
Powerful.
And I think we sometimes underestimate and don't see that opportunity.
Yeah. So I just want to pause you and just speak to the listeners or viewers, which is what a great question for all of us to ask ourselves, because what I'm hearing is, who am I if I strip away the labels, right? And what a powerful question, because it really questions this whole piece around identity. What have I been holding on to define who I am, right?
Yeah, because sometimes it's like a comfort blanket,
Oh, totally,
like my
right?
business card or my children, or there's so much that, I think that we carry with us as part of identities that is so powerful and so beautiful, and yet sometimes can also hold us back from really stepping into the fullness of who we can be and how we can evolve. Because I think it took me some time after when I stepped back from, leading and running the Hidden Good, that I had to say this question about, who am I now? What do I want? What do I want to become? And and I remember that adaptive leadership, the work that we did, the top of like the course, the course curriculum for the semester, it said, there was this quote by Walt Whitman that said, do I contradict myself? I contradict myself. We contain multitudes, or something along those lines. But remembering that we do contain multitudes. And sometimes those things might feel at odds, but that's also the process of becoming, right? And clarifying who we are and, what's important and how we live. And for so long, I feel like the Hidden Good was my primary identity. And I kind of forgot about some other parts of me. And so in this season of life that I'm in now, as a mother, working also in the leadership space. And, my husband, Jared, and I are, as I mentioned to you earlier, we are designing our portfolio year adventure.
Yeah,
family
I want to hear about
year
that.
adventure. Yeah, we can talk about that in a bit. It's I think this intentional process of designing, reimagining who we are right now in this season, who we want to be, and especially now with children, right? How do we want to raise our family, and while creating space for our own ambitions and dreams, and living in that both end.
Yeah. I just want to, I really want to jump into that because that's very, very interesting to me, certainly. But one thing I notice about you is you're always up to something. You're always, even as you, for those of you who know Jiezhen, she loves her soup, right?
Yes.
Even in her postings on her soup that she's having, there's always some form of contribution. There's always some thought or some reflection. And I notice that you don't do this. It's not a solo sport for you. It's always about, how do I bring people in with me? You know, you talk about family. How do we now design a future that includes kids and adventure and all of that? But even the things that you're doing with your mommy's group, right? Yeah. Going for your walks.
Oh yeah, we hadn't even talked about that.
Exactly.
Many things. This is the portfolio life, right? It's what are the multitudes that make us who we are, and how do we live them fully? You know, and I think in this increasingly digitized, agentic world where time will look different, like a task, the time that we take to do tasks will be different. Time is going to be freed up as well, right? And it might be easy to just replace it with or do more of what you're already doing. But how can we also just reimagine the parts that make us whole, right? And to live them, be like my mindful mamas, you know, collective and that I started when I had Jasper, right after I had Jasper, my second child, when he was born. And I was asking myself, like, you know, who is my community now? I moved back to Singapore. What is the community I wish I had, right? And I could have just created for myself, right? Just find my own friends, like hang out with them. But I was like, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's feeling this way. And maybe that's the thread that has kind of followed me, you know, even with the hidden good. I was like, I want to make a difference as a young person. Can't be the only one feeling this way. How do we bring more people along and bring people on the journey?
That's so apparent for me. And it's so accessible. So it's other people who are like me, parents, moms with kids. And I know you guys meet up at the botanical gardens, McRitchie, and go for walks. And it's your flavor in through my lens it's just accessibility.
Yeah, I think intentionally, I've been quite intentional about wanting to make it accessible to people and inclusive. So, you know, it's just been, but accessible while also making sure that we keep the community safe. I think that's actually, the Mindful Mamas has grown quite organically through word of mouth, because I think more people want community. They want to find like-minded, light-hearted parents and mothers they can raise their children with, right? It started with, just like maybe 5 to 10 moms taking walks in nature with the babies, right? And just trying to be mindful about how we were showing up for ourselves and our children in this season. And now there's like 1,500, 1,600 moms, right?
From 10, wow.
Yeah. And, you know, so we exist in like a WhatsApp community. I think it was also timing. The way that communities have been able to evolve on platforms like WhatsApp and has been very helpful, I think, in giving communities a place to live. But at the same time, you know, we've actually never posted like how to join the link publicly or anywhere. We don't have a website and Instagram intentionally, because we want people who are actually moms to come, right?
Yeah.
And keeping the community safe in this digital age has also been something that has been top of mind. So it's really grown very organically. But I think having a safe space, or maybe a brave space to ask those questions, to step
or
out.
both.
Because a lot of moms are actually first-time moms. I remember how intimidated I was leaving the house by myself for the first time with a baby, and having other people to do it with sometimes makes life less scary. I think that applies for a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
When you're trying to step into a new identity or to do something new, having someone to go along with you to do it, even if they're just there, right?
Yeah.
And just being present. Maybe like how I was, you know, being able to be present with those girls that I was volunteering with. Sometimes it just makes you a little bit bolder, have a little bit more courage if you have someone with you, right? And
it also makes you more human, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right? When
remembering that you are human and that you're not alone and we're connected to something greater than ourselves.
And you're providing a space for someone else to step into themselves.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of what I do as a coach and you know, in the leadership space that I'm into. And when I sit across the table from someone, is holding the space for them to fully step into that fullest, most beautiful version of themselves that maybe they have hidden for some time or were told that this is not, important. And sometimes I was just talking, I was just coaching someone last week on, for a long time he was told that sometimes his emotions or anger were not welcome, right, in the workplace. But as we know in ontological coaching, that anger tells us what's important to us. It tells us when emotions have information for us too, right? If we lean into it, and that tells us what's important to us, tells us when we feel something unjust has happened, and how can we lean into those insights more and maybe come from a different place to communicate the underlying message of what we're trying to say. And but sometimes it's just sitting across from someone and holding that space for them to come to those conclusions on themselves.
I'd love to come back to what we started to speak about, which is your family portfolio year adventure, right? So tell us more about that.
This is a very exciting, I think, chapter we're stepping into. Actually, just this month, we began officially, but we've been planning this for a while. So last year, Jared, my husband, and I went on this marriage retreat. Have you heard of it? Marriage Encounter? Did I tell you about it? Anyway, we went on this marriage retreat. My in-laws did it when they first got married.
Okay.
So we always thought we wanted to do it at some point when we got married, because I think it really fundamentally changed and transformed their marriage. And we're like, okay, there's something we want to do a few years in. Had kids, everything, and then we finally made time for it. But we had this weekend. It was like a weekend retreat, and one of the questions that we were reflecting on, so they give you questions to reflect on together as a couple, was like, what is the vision for our family, right? Like, what do we want to create, and what is important to us right now? And I think asking ourselves that question periodically is very important also, even as an individual, because sometimes we're living an old story that has expired already, right? And we don't realize it. We don't give ourselves the permission to evolve. And I think even as a woman, right, like one of the most powerful things we can do ourselves, and even as a mother, we've given, we have maybe birth and raised some children, but there's a song that was like, I'm a woman giving birth to myself over and over again, and giving ourselves the space to do that. So my husband and I were sitting down thinking about what we wanted to do. And what is this? And I was sitting with this question, I think since I had Jasper, about what is this version of myself? I think we actually spoke about this, right? Too. What is this version of myself that I am wanting to bring into the world and to give birth to, not another human, but myself. What is this version of myself? And I think what we landed on was that, okay, we feel like we're good. We have 2 kids now, they're wonderful. We feel very balanced. Our family feels very complete. So what is next? I feel like I'm done with maybe the being pregnant, giving birth season of my life, and what's next for us. And I think we asked ourselves what we wanted to be, and then we realized, okay, Juniper is 5 this year, so she's due to enroll into primary school next year. And we said we almost have this window right now, right, where our kids are still young. They still want to be with us all the time. I don't know. I've heard as they get older, maybe they become more independent. But I still hang out with my parents all the time. So, I still want to hang out with my parents. So it's not
They may not want you to be hanging out with them all the time.
No, they do. They're like, what are you doing for lunch today? We're going to have lunch with them later. I thought Jared and I were going for lunch, but my parents want to still hang out. So it's nice. I think I like to be able to have that relationship with my kids as they grow up as well. So, but I think what was very formative for me and my siblings growing up is that, we were surrounded by a lot of that love, and we want to make sure that our kids have that as well. And so, when we thought about this window of time that we have with our children, we asked ourselves, what does this look like? And what have we always wanted to do, right? So, we're like, should we travel around the world? That was the initial thought. I was like, how about 7 continents in 7 months? And I started planning, and I was like, okay, wait, but is it really about travel? I think what we've landed on is travel can be part of our family portfolio year adventure is what we're calling it.
Right.
Because, I think this emergence of more portfolio careers, portfolio lives, where it's not
what
just...
What does that mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, interesting that you asked, because some of our listeners this might be a newer term. Some people keep asking us that. We assume people know what it means. But a whole idea that, you have an investment portfolio, right? You want it to be diversified. You want it to be balanced. Shouldn't your life be that way too? Because sometimes we have one job, right? And then that's the thing. And right now in the world that we live in, jobs kind of flow. They kind of come and go. They're evolving with, the introduction of AI. So, are there certain is my work now a portfolio of a few different projects and interests and threads and ventures? And, what does that look like? What does my work look like? What does my family life look like? What does my marriage look like? What does my health look like, right? How does that all come together? And I think it gives us a much more well-rounded, holistic picture of who we can be instead of, I'm this person from this time to this time of the day when I'm at work, and this person, because you're not. When you're at work, you're still a mom, right? You're still
That's
a wife.
right.
You're still
Yeah.
teeny. And I think giving ourselves permission to step into that wholeness and the fullness of how we can live. So we're not fully stopping work. So at first I kept calling it a sabbatical, and Jared told me, you can't call it a sabbatical because we're not fully stopping work. And sabbatical, we looked it up, implies that you're taking a break from work. We are just reimagining how we work. So we love our work. I find a lot of meaning in my work. So does Jared. And we want to do the work that we love in the world while also being present for our family, for each other, for our children. So it's living out that both end, right? So there's some travel involved. Like we're going off to Thailand for 2 weeks on Sunday. We spent 2 weeks in China last month. Then I came back for
Everything
a week.
with the kids.
Yeah, so
nice.
So we took the kids to China with us. We came back, or maybe we'll do some stuff just us too. Who knows? We might we're trying to do like just a couple trip once a year, just us. But last week I went with Juniper, so it might not be 4 of us all the time together. So Jared and Jasper had some boys' time in Singapore. Juniper and I went on a mindfulness retreat together. It was our first mother-daughter mindfulness retreat that we went on together, and it was really, really nice. So giving a space to do those things. So Juniper is currently on a leave of absence from school, so she can be in the world, the school of the world.
So interesting.
Yeah. So we're in the first chapter right now, where we're doing like half the month in Singapore, half the month out. Because a lot of my coaching clients still prefer the in-person, and I do too. I feel like I get the whole person and not just the Zoom box.
Yeah.
Even though online is still very possible now, as we know. So I still do some in-person facilitation and coaching, and I give talks or, hostings while we're here. And then, so it gives us the both ends, right? Nice. The best of both worlds.
And of course, what we know, another thing you started with Juniper is a podcast.
Yes, we did.
And so tune in. It's called Pajama Podcast.
Yes. It's called
AKA Pajama Party Podcast. Yes. And we also have your co-star here today. So we have Juniper with us.
Yes,
And so we're going to have Juniper join us. And she's enthusiastically...
Hi, Juniper.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
Is this a bit different from our setup, our podcast setup at home?
You can see yourself over there, right?
Too. Yeah.
Nice. So we're going to talk about your podcast, but let me ask your mom, all right, first, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, all right? So what's the vision for this podcast? What was your intent?
So I've been wanting to start a podcast for a while. I really enjoy, I've been on I've done a bunch of podcast interviews, and I really enjoy that space just to hold and have a conversation. Okay, but let's not move the mic, okay? And I think Juniper and I have also, Juniper just turned 5, and I feel like we've been having some really wonderful conversations. And my parents actually, growing up, they took a lot of like those home videos and photos, and Jared and I have really been intentional and loved that whole idea of chronicling moments and memories. I feel like the podcast is a way to capture some of our conversations.
Totally.
Not all of them, and the moment in time,
Yeah. And the mood that you create for those.
Like you're in my living room.
You're in your living room. They're in their pajamas, and there's a really warm, connected feeling.
Yeah.
So let me ask Juniper.
Yeah.
What do you love about the podcast that you do with your mom? She's whispering her response.
What? Say again? You like having fun? What? Chuba, you can say in the microphone.
Oh, fine.
You love fun?
It's very fun that we get to talk, and then she would ask me some questions on the birthday one, remember?
Oh yeah, it's very fun that we get to talk and ask you questions. And then what was really funny, we haven't uploaded this episode yet, but she decided to ask me questions as well.
Good for you.
So she can't really write full sentences or words just yet, but she would write some questions she had for me, right, on a piece of paper. So we would interview each other, which I feel like is so...
That's awesome.
Such a wonderful way to get to know each other in
Yeah.
a different shape and form. And it's just really precious time. And it started with us wanting to actually just record some questions. I wanted to ask her, I've seen some parents take a video of your kid at this age every year on their birthday. But then we realized she actually really likes speaking. She likes, she really likes microphones, as you can tell. So we thought, might as well, if I'm going to do this podcast, I was having a hard time trying to find when am I going to do it. So I was like, might as well, instead of trying to do it away from my child, do it with her, right?
Yes.
And it was actually Juniper's idea for us to wear pajamas.
I think that's the brilliant
But
idea.
on the second night, we were supposed to wear kabaya, but we didn't.
On the second night, you're supposed to wear a kabaya, but you didn't. Well, you'll have other episodes you can do that. But from a parenting perspective, what do you think it's creating? What do you think this, I don't know if we call it a project or the podcast, what does it create?
I think it's creating so many things, right? There's a shared co-creation of a project and an initiative that we have embarked on together. It's creating a holding space and a container where, oh my gosh, we recorded the first episode. The second episode, we got back from Vietnam really late that night, but she knew every Monday night is when we record our podcast. She insisted we record our podcast right before going to sleep. We were a bit loopy. It was getting a bit delirious because it was very late. I think it was 10 or 11. But that commitment to hey, we have this time to talk after her baby brother goes to bed. It's our time. And usually we do other things, we do activities or read, but this has been a nice touchstone. I think it's really nice to have family traditions and rituals that ground you and that you can look forward to as well. And this has become one of them.
That's really nice. The other thing that as I listen to you, I'm linking it to, say, someone who's listening who may not have kids, but is a leader in an organization. We talk about empowerment. We talk about having consistent conversations. We talk about creativity. How do we do things differently, right?
And I think being able to, let's say you did something similar with your team, maybe you have a company podcast or something, you're giving the other person, right, the space to know that their voice matters and that it's heard.
Express.
Right,
to express,
and
right?
when you have a container, intentional container, it's not just a hi-bye, kind of by the way conversation. I think you're really giving that, you're empowering someone to step into their version of themselves right now.
Step into themselves.
One of my, I don't know if you heard this on that first episode, but I think I asked Juniper, what are you most interested in learning about right now? And she said, about myself. And, and being able for her to, I've never actually heard her say, she said some stuff on the podcast I've never heard her say before. And it's just very insightful for me as a parent too. And also, in the leadership kind of way to be wow, what is really going through her mind and her heart right now?
Yeah.
And
but also, where she's your teacher, right? There's so much wisdom for her for Juniper, for you to have said, I'm here to learn about myself.
Yeah. For
an adult who's, sprinting through life, chasing deadlines, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and when we travel so much. Juniper's gone to so many countries, and I asked her, what is your favorite thing to do, as a family? And she said, just hang out and eat oranges together. And we've done so many things, right? But reminding us that it's also the really simple things and the little things. The traveling is honestly for us as parents too. Jared and I were very intentional that we didn't want to stop living just because we had children. So it's how do we incorporate them into our life and build, travel looks different now, but it's still very full and very dynamic because we have our kids with us. And in the same way, being able to, instead of thinking, I can't do the podcast because I have my hands full with the children, how do I incorporate them and include them and be part of it. I think you talked about being accessible and inclusive.
Yeah.
I feel like that is something we can do with our children as well.
And this is a perfect example, right, of incorporating your leadership, your vision, your ambition with family, with play, right, adventure. And so what a great kind of model, right? So we're going to start to wrap this up. Thank you both for being here. I just want to ask Mom, right? What would you want the listeners to leave with? Is there any bits of wisdom that you want to leave our listeners or viewers with?
Probably give yourself the permission. I think giving ourselves the permission to reimagine who we are in each season and each chapter, and who we are and really giving ourselves that permission to tune into who we are in the moment, I think gives us so much more freedom and possibility.
That's really beautiful.
To really be true to who we are. And it's not about, I think, flip-flopping or changing. It's, if anything, it's filling out your fullness of who you can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. So I want to end and just speak to our listeners on what you can think about, right, off of today's session. So there are a few things, and I'm taking this from what you said, which is, who are you beyond your labels, right? So just take a moment to think about, gosh, who am I if I were to strip away my job title, I'm a mom or I'm a dad or I'm a brother or sister. Who are you beyond all of that, right? What a really powerful question. And then what are some of the old stories that you are living in that have expired, right? And the word that you use is reimagine, right? So what are some of the things that you can start to reimagine for yourself? And what are some new stories that you can start to create to take you for the next few years until you choose to reimagine it again? All right. Until then, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode. See you or have you listen to us in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye-bye.